Hello and welcome to the Pre-Chiro podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Glass, and today we're making a professional chiropractor connection out in Illinois with Dr. Daniel Bai. Dr. Bai, can you get us started by just introducing yourself and also reflecting on that moment in life where you decide you want to become a chiropractor? What was it that attracted you to this path?
Awesome. Hey, thanks for having me on, Dr. Ben. Totally appreciate it. I don't get to talk to students often, so when I do, I really keep it really special and near and dear to my heart, mainly because when I first started chiropractic school, I had no intention of ever being a chiropractor. I was in a 5-year MSPT, which is Master of Physical Therapy program at the time at Boston University. Um, it was a very popular program. I was in my 4th year. I was a student athlete at the time. I was doing my whole thing, and I got injured. And I went to the mecca of physical therapy and orthopedics. And Boston is just like the medical mecca, if you would. Mass General's there, Boston University Medical is there, Harvard Medical is there. It's just crazy. But I bounced around between, I'm going to say, 8 different specialists to figure this injury out. It was in my lower back. Later, I found out it was just a severe right SI joint fixation that just was not getting better. Nevertheless, had a couple of MRIs. I saw a bunch of quote smart people, and no one could figure it out. Sent home with the typical, muscle relaxers and PT for 6 weeks, and with no results. Long story short, I ran into a chiropractor online at Starbucks. The only thing that made me happy at the time was a caramel frappuccino venti, and he saw me limping there, and obviously I was 19 years old, and why would this guy be limping? And so he kind of sparked a conversation and then just talked to me. And I'll never forget that conversation because, he didn't come off as a doctor or anything. He was very, very, humble looking, if you would. I think he had Birkenstocks and socks on, if I remember. And I know you're from California, Ben, so you get it. But for me from the East Coast, I was like, what is this guy doing? And he started asking me questions about it. And I started telling him, and I started to just, I remember feeling the frustration just kind of come to the surface. And I pretty much just talked to a guy in line at Starbucks, telling what the problem was. And he's like, listen, I'm a chiropractor, like literally across the street. Let me just take a look at you. I'm not promising you anything. Let me see what I can do for you. Cause man, like you're 19, man, you should be doing cartwheels. You shouldn't be dealing with this. I'm like, I freaking agree, dude. Like, what do you got? Long story short, I went to his office. The rest is history. It was like magic. And then after that, I was like, what am I doing? It's like, I want to be a PT, but why? I didn't understand until I talked to him, and I was like, hey, dude, like, how do you do this chiropractic thing? And so, well, you got to go to this school. Here's this application. But, I'll never forget. And this is why chiropractic is so awesome. Like, the humanity aspect of healthcare still exists in chiropractic. And this is one example. He's like, listen, I'll say this is the best profession I've ever that exists. All of my buddies, after 30 years in practice, I'm the luckiest person alive to do this. But only do this if you truly, truly want to help people. If you're going to do this just for the dough or just for the prestige, which you don't really have any negative brand equity, then like look elsewhere, like sell real estate, do PT, go into medical pharmaceutical sales if you want, but don't be a chiropractor because you're going to be incredibly unhappy if you're only doing it for the wrong reason. So Dr. Ben, sorry for the long-winded explanation, but that's my story, man. That's how it all got started for me.
No, that's what this conversation is really all about, is teasing out the details of what people go through in life and how they find chiropractic. Because as you know, it's not on the radar. It's not, you were in a master's program, a college athlete, and you weren't really thinking of chiropractic. And it's like, can you kind of just reflect on that moment when you decided you wanted to go to chiropractic school, and kind of like telling your family members, or just like what that transition was like for you when you made that pivot, and like how people received it, how you were kind of thinking through it, and maybe just like what you encountered when you got to chiropractic school, any surprises, anything that you gravitated towards when you first got there?
Sure. So the first part of your question is, what was it like when I decided I want to go to the Chiro school? And by the way, I'm a graduate of Life University, 2001, and I was actually pretty terrified, Doc. So I wish I could say I was excited. I really didn't know what to expect. Understand, when I was contemplating going, I had already read the negative press about it. But what overwhelmed me was the seemingly miraculous results that I received after countless failed attempts. So that just brought me through. I was like, there's got to be something to this. I know it's just only my anecdotal experience, but there's got to be something to this. So that got me through all of the negativity surrounding it. And also, I just wanted to really just help people. Like, I love the idea that I could do that to somebody else that Dr. Leader did for me. And and there was that was absolutely priceless, and I was willing to endure any of the crap. However, crap that I did endure, because understand, and I don't know if your listeners know, but I'm Asian American, first, a second generation. You gotta understand, like, my upbringing was all about prestige and status, and that's just how I was brought up. And telling my parents that I wanted to go to chiropractic school was like, like what? Like, what is that? They really didn't know what that was. Are you a doctor or are you not? I don't really get it. And so immigrant parents, that are not as educated in, in any profession, because they were just, white knuckled through their entire like labor and own businesses and just worked really hard. Like, they didn't understand that. So, trying to get my parents to understand what I was doing was very challenging. I never succeeded in really helping them understand till later in life. But at the time, I always walked around with this feeling of like, my parents think I'm making a mistake. I'm not sure, and there was a tremendous amount of doubt. At the same time, my college girlfriend at the time was doing the same thing. She's like, "What? Isn't that like a cult?" Like, I got all of that crap, and I was like, you know what? Maybe this is not the right thing. I'm not really sure I want to do this. Maybe I should just. And I had already took my MCATs. I was already gonna medical school bound at the point. I had applications out, so like, maybe it's not too late. Maybe I should go. But again, when I came down to brass tacks, I was like, like, I don't care. Like, what happened to me is unbelievable. Like, people don't believe me when I tell them the story, and and I know that happened to me. So it's like, you know what, I just got to do it, because I just follow my heart. And I'll never forget my guidance counselor at Boston University. She was a big name neurophysiologist, and I was telling her, like, I'm going to chiropractic school. She's like, well, and again, like, bad, but she did say this at the end. It's like, Dan, ultimately, I may not agree with where you want to go and how you want to do this, but ultimately you got to follow your heart. And if you do that, everything's going to work out. And I was like, dude, lady, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. And boom, submitted, paid my money. And I went down south to Life University in Atlanta, home of the Fallen Keys, Sid Williams, rest in peace. And the rest is history.
Yeah, speaking of history, can you kind of reflect on the culture at Life University when you were there, and just like what it felt like to be on that campus, the history of that campus, if you want to share a little bit of insight into just like what it meant to become a chiropractor at Life University as you were going through it?
Yeah, no doubt. School for me was a little different, because understand, my first 2 years of actual academic work was already a repeat. I had already done the anatomy, the basic sciences. So to be frank, since we're shooting from the hip here, I partied a lot the first 2 years of chiro school. I didn't work too hard. I already kind of knew the stuff already. But in terms of the culture of school, I got to tell you, what I really loved about my experience was the club scene. It was hopping. The clubs were the place to be. And because I knew that one of the skills that I had to develop in school was my touch skills. I didn't really have it, didn't have the fine touch. And I used to hear about the old school gurus talk about like putting a piece of hair between pages of a yellow pages. I don't know how old that saying is nowadays. Like, what the heck is a yellow page? But defining your fine touch and all that. And so when I went to the clubs, it was really like an incredible experience to get repetitions on using my senses of touch and to develop that over the years. Now, if I have to give any advice to young chiro students out there, like, man, you don't want to be developing your touch once you graduate. Like, you have so much time, so many people that you can get your hands on. And even if you don't know what you're touching, because I didn't, I'll never forget this, Ben. I was like, yeah, feel this. This is the Atlas TP. I'm like, all right, like, no idea what I was feeling for. I had no clue at all. But the more I did it, there comes a point, it's like an epiphany. Holy crap, like, there it is. I can actually feel it, And I feel the soft tissue above and below and behind it. I can feel it moving into your posterior and laterally flexing. Like, oh my God, like, this is what they were talking about. Like, I totally, totally dig it. So the club scene was huge. Philosophy, I had a love hate with philosophy when I was in school, to be honest. I didn't really get it. Sid Williams was the man, and I gotta tell you, I appreciate him more now than I did when I was in school, no doubt about it, and more that now that he's passed away. But I didn't understand the philosophy thing. But you know what? I'm such a dumbass. Like I should have paid attention more about the philosophy. Now that I'm 20 years into practice. So if that doesn't tell your listeners about philosophy, I don't know what else will.
Mhm. Yeah, one of the ways that I'm contextualizing becoming a chiropractor is I broke a Nate up into your inner state, and state is an acronym. So I'm wondering if you could just touch on each of these different skill trees and maybe just reflect on how you're using them in practice or how relevant they are to you. So your inner scientist, thinker, artist, teacher, entrepreneur, and maybe you want to key in on one of those five things, but I'll just, science, philosophy, art, business, communication. If you could kind of just unpack that for a student to better understand what's unique about a chiropractor and just help build context for them of
Mm.
the types of skills they need to build.
Oh, that's a great question, Ben. All right, so here's how I see it, and I'm going to just give you an analogy of a musician. I don't know if anyone out there has actually played music or even played a recital in front of friends and family, or maybe there's some listeners that are professional musicians. I do know that if you want to make it to Carnegie Hall, let's say, and let's say you're playing the piano, um, a lot of things needed to happen there. I'll tell you where they started though. They started learning a skill, whether or not they understood why they were learning it. They learned the scales. They learned to read music. They learned the fingering and the patterns, the technique surrounding it. And in that particular stage, all it is a technique. It has no life. It has no depth. It's just, hey, monkey see, monkey do. And something amazing happens when you take a technique and you add repetitions to it to a point where you're unconsciously doing it. So let me bring it back to the context in question. Let's just say adjusting. In the beginning, you're like, oh my God, where does my hand go? Oh my God, where does my body go? Like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this. Over repetition, you don't think about those things. And now all you're actually feeling are the releases and the subluxations being corrected underneath your fingertips. Like that mentality can never be gotten until you've gotten enough repetition of the technique under your belt for so long that it unlocks another level. For the gamers out there, you guys don't know how this works. It's level 1 and you unlock a level 2. And once you're on level 20, you look back to level 1. I was like, my God, I can't believe I worked so hard figuring out the pieces of level 1, but you did. Let's talk about business. Same thing. It's a skill like anything else. So they're all comprehensive, but it always starts out with learning a skill that you did not know. And I believe that a lot of chiropractors out there never endure the uncomfortableness of learning a new skill, whether it be adjusting or palpation or practice management or sales or marketing or copywriting, ad writing. Like, you take your pick, we cover it all. But a lot of chiropractors, and I say chiropractors because I study under other industries as well. We, for some reason, seem to have the hardest time enduring the uncomfortable nature of doing something new and then being as repetitive as possible to be able to get to the next level where therein lies the human aspect to the thing. So back to the music analogy, in the beginning it was technique, but at a certain point it's not technique at all. It's all about feeling and energy and expression and all about how to tap into the human frame and condition. That was the whole point of this whole thing. And that master concert pianist, I got to a point where they're sending shivers down, the audience's spines. Never met the person personally, but that connection was there in that particular medium because that particular artist devoted their entire lives of learning a technique so down solid where it's unconscious that unlocks another level of spirituality, if you want to call it, or human element, if you want to call it. I don't know. I just kind of babble there. I don't know if there's any of that stuff made any sense to you guys, but that's just how I'm rapping today.
I appreciate you. Thank you for that. And as we transition to this next stage, so kind of this conversation is a parallel to the program that I'm proposing students go through. The third stage is the apprentice. Can you bring people into your world, your practice, how you've set it up, how you've designed it, how you relate to people? I know you could talk a whole weekend, or that you do talk for weekends about this topic, but if you could kind of just talk to somebody, a high school, college student, maybe even a chiropractic student, as if they were your apprentice and you were inviting them to come into your practice and tease out all the details of what you've brought together to express yourself as a chiropractor?
Mm. Well, I guess my answer would differ depending on where I am, but just currently, right now, my biggest challenge, especially with teaching, and I do teach chiropractors worldwide, and that's this concept that um, you know is to get other people to know what you know and to do what you do, right? Because obviously, as chiropractors, we have a higher level of understanding of where true health and wellness comes from. That's no doubt about it. Chiropractic itself is the greatest healthcare product in the world. I don't care. I don't care what anybody says. That is the truth. Okay. But how do we get the other person, the people that we're serving, to understand what we're trying to accomplish at our level? So that's the biggest challenge, because if we don't reconcile the fact that most of our people will never ever achieve an understanding of what you're trying to accomplish, okay? If we don't accept that to be a fact, because that's a fact, then we'll always be disappointed. So I guess it's a matter of expectation management. However, it doesn't mean that we don't die trying, right? But our trying sometimes makes us fall flat. Our trying is what is results has resulted in the overzealous chiropractor. You know what I'm talking about? Like the chiropractors who are doing cartwheels and high pies, and your patient's looking at you like, "What the f are you doing? I don't get it." Right? Oh, they're just really overzealous about it. They're almost religious about it. Oh my gosh, it just doesn't feel right. And that is what chiropractic has suffered with in 100 years, because frankly, chiropractic philosophy and what we actually represent is ahead of its time. That is a fact. But our marketplace is where they are. So what do we do? If I have students, and I do have students in my practice all the time, and I teach practicing chiropractors all around the world all the time, the one of the concepts, and it's a bit crass, but I'm going to share here anyway, is STFU. Everyone should know what that stands for. STFU. What does that mean conceptually? It means your wants, needs, and desires to share your message to the world is irrelevant. Wow. That's what I'm saying. STFU. What is relevant? You're the wants of your patients. Wants, needs, and desires is everything. So we have a saying: sell them what they want while educating what they could have. And the educate what they could have means they could have it. It doesn't mean they will have it, but we certainly will never ever be able to break the mold, or break through certain market influence until we first sell people what they want. I mean, the public is like kindergartners when it comes to their understanding of health and wellness, right? And chiropractors are walking out around with PhDs, multiple PhDs with their understanding. And so when you get a PhD talking to a kindergartner, that takes skill. Just like my freshman year differential equations professor in math, I could not understand anything this poor man was saying. He was from Russia, supposedly Nobel Prize winning mathematician, but teaching freshman math, and I could not understand anything he was saying because his level of understanding was so much higher than mine, that his skill level of breaking it down to its consumable was not there. And so again, back to your question, if I have someone with me, the first thing we're going to talk about, okay, first thing is going to talk about is how do we break down what we're doing to a component that the person across from you can understand, consume, and then also want. And then after that's done, then we grow together, and they're now eventually educating what they could have. In my 20-year career, I've had 3 patients that truly got chiropractic. These are the people who used to borrow my green books and stuff. You know what I'm saying? They truly got it. Everyone else, no. And now it's okay. I'm okay with that. But again, I'm never going to stop trying to do that.
So the next stage that students will go through after they go to an office like yours and getting exposure to what it looks like to provide chiropractic care, to walk people through their day 1, day 2, or just to look at people's paperwork and look at the questions that the chiropractor is asking their people that are coming in for care, is we're challenging them to go start their own pre-chiro club. I'm curious if you could riff for a few minutes on what that could look like, as far as the pre-Chiro club reaching out to support the student community, selling the student community what it wants. Obviously, we would have to probably do some market research, but the guidance counselors, the teachers, the administrators, there's not really a lot of presence of chiropractic on your typical average college campus. Even in the health center, the college health center, there's really no chiropractor. So I'm just curious from that angle, like how a student could embark on this journey to
Mm.
start a pre-Chiro club in the same essence of starting their own practice and then grow the pre-Chiro club.
Oh, what a great question, Ben. You're right. If you wanted to start something that hasn't existed before, and you wanted to attract people into a thing, I mean, that's exactly what you're doing in practice, right? I mean, you have this practice, never existed before, right? And here I am. How do we do that? Well, you talk about market research. I don't think we need to do any markets research, like officially or technically. What really is we got to ask the right questions. And this is the question that you all have to ask, whether you're starting a pre-Chiro club in your school, which I highly recommend. Club scene was awesome for me. I know lately it's just kind of wavering. I hope it comes back. The question is, what do they want? It's a simple question. What do they want? And you don't have to do market research, because what your fellow students want that you're trying to serve is probably exactly what you want. So answer the question yourself. So the conversation might go like this: I want to start a pre-Chiro club. I want to make a club that's going to enhance the experience of the students while they're here, but also prepare them for when they're out of school and they have to start their own practices or whatever. What do they want? Well, there's some commonalities right here. Okay, number one, I want to be successful. Duh. Like, we don't have to really do market research on that one. Great. Who does this to fail, right? Number two, what does success look like? Now we can tease it out. Do we want high revenue, high visits? Do we want to do this? Like, you can write those things down. So if let's just, get off the idealism here. If you're starting a practice, right? Let's just be completely fair. And I have no shyness about talking about this. It's you need to make money. I'm sorry. For anyone out there who's weird about money, like, get over it, because your business needs money. That's the purpose of a business. If you don't business doesn't have revenue, it dies. It's the lifeblood. It's the central nervous system of a business, right? So you need that. So now we got to focus on, okay, how do we make more how do we earn revenue in my business? It might be a question that you ask, and yes, people want that. So how do we get that so that it's up? We can develop a place where people want something. Well, it's again starts with the question: what do I want? And after you know what they want, which is obviously what you want, is now you're going to develop a game plan of how to get that person what they truly want. Okay, I want to make sure I start my practice, I'm in the black within first 6 months. It's a great question. How do you do that? Well, here's step 1 to 12. And this is exactly what proven practice owners have done for the past 50 years in North America. Why recreate the wheel? These are the skills that they wish they learned in school. So let's do that. Step 1, how to do a simple consultation. Like, I know what student clinic is like, guys. That's not real world. I don't know about you, Ben, but it took me like 4 hours to process a new patient in student clinic. Like, it's not real world. Like, you would never do that. So how do you do a proper consultation that sets you up for success as well as sets your patients up for success? How do you do that? Is there a framework? Is there a template? Oh, well, here it is. It's already been done. Okay, let's get the experts on the line and see what's happening. Great. How do you do a proper report of findings that's not a diatribe about chiropractic philosophy or rankinological principles or numbers on a CBP, curvature of a digital X-ray? Like, how do we present diagnostic findings to your patients so it's real? Question, there's an answer. Let's work on those skills, just like that concert pianist is working on scales. These are skills that none of you have right now, but you need to develop. So if, like, just for example, I'm just saying, if those are the concepts, right, then you're going to attract people in the student body, be like, you know what? He's right or she's right. I got to learn these skills now before I get out there, because I'm going to need those skills eventually. So might as well worry about that now. And let me just get at least a framework so I'm not completely winging it in practice when I actually get out there.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fascinating discussion to have about the culture on a college campus. They have this concept of the freshman 15. You're going to gain 15 pounds in your first year, and like reframing that from a pre-Chiro club perspective to like
Hmm.
15 things that you could add to improve your lifestyle potentially, if that's what the kids want to do or the students want to do. I'm curious if you could provide a prompt for an independent study capstone project. So students have gone through like the foundations of what chiropractic is, why people go to chiropractic school. They've learned about the different skill sets. They've been in offices. They've even participated in a pre-Chiro club, and now they have 3 to 6 months to just spend on whatever they want. Can you maybe just provide some sort of creative prompt that will
Hmm.
lead them to find meaning in their last year or their last 6 months of school?
It's a great question. All right, here's one. The the odds of successful clinical outcomes based on how forthright and honest a new patient is on the initial consultation. So let me color that up. I believe, this is my thesis or my hypothesis. I believe that if the doctor establishes enough trust and rapport and authority and empathy for the patient to divulge their deepest and darkest wants, needs, and desires, all the past traumas and histories, which, if you haven't figured it out, people lie. I'm just kidding. They don't lie intentionally. They just either forget or they don't think it's important. And they're able to divulge as much of that stuff up front. I sincerely believe that has a huge direct correlation to clinical outcome. Okay. A, because not I'm going to give away the answer to whoever's doing this capstone, but A, because compliance will be higher, you know? And I truly believe that most chiropractors don't get the results that they truly want, need, and desire for their patients because most of them don't stick around long enough, you know? They quit before you have any chance to really reach a level of success clinically that you should be getting. So, A, compliance. B, is now that we have an emotional component. Like we all understand in chiropractic, there is an emotional component to healing. And I don't know about you, I don't need a PhD in psychoenergetics or epigenetics. I know that if I truly trust a provider of a service, someone helping me, and I trust them like implicitly, the odds of me succeeding with what they want me to do are way higher on an energetic level, okay, or on a psychological level. Let's just put it that way for to be more consumable, right? And lastly, if a patient divulges as much as they can to the doctor they truly trust and they truly want and they truly desire, then not only do you have better compliance, you have better energy, right? But now the patient feels empowered that they are doing the things under their own will to get to a goal, their desired outcome. So not only are they a passenger in this journey, but they're invested in it. Their time, their money, their energy, it's also going into this desired outcome. And having higher clinical outcomes at the end is way more inevitable than if someone did not divulge their truest, like deep one and not need and desire up front. Sounds like a great study to me, Dr. Ben. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm enjoying that. Yes, I think that spending some time. So, do you imagine that this would happen with them kind of exploring the literature for anything related to that topic and then maybe going into practices with their own sort of pre created questionnaire that they have
Mm-hmm.
to just kind of ask the chiropractor how much people are able to divulge in those categories that you described?
Totally. And here's the spoiler, folks. This has already been studied on many different levels over the past probably millennium. So this is not new. In healthcare, people have been trying to crack the code on getting the best clinical outcomes in the shortest amount of time, you know? And it's not just about the practice of healthcare, right? But it's also, like I said, the human aspect of what does it take for a patient to divulge so many, personal, deep rooted, dark secrets and needs, wants, and desires. Like, what does it take for the practitioner to elicit that and have a person share that? Already been studied, right? Now, maybe there's not a correlation yet built in the chiropractic practice. And if there is, I haven't seen it yet, but I'd love to see it in the future because, I mean, anecdotally, non research based makes sense to me. Logic prevails on this one, but to have it studied and have it measured and have metrics on it, it'll be great to see.
And then as we move into this last part of the pre-Chiro program, so they've gone through all of that, and now it's like kind of prompting them to really align with the school that most aligns with their interests. Maybe they have a specialized pathway they're interested in taking. Do you have any advice? Say you're the guidance counselor on how somebody can go about maybe exploring their options and coming to a clear choice that makes sense for them, that's not based necessarily on location. Maybe it is a little bit, but is not the only reason why they're going to the school that they're going to, and maybe just reflecting on your experience going around the world teaching chiropractors and seeing how different it can look.
Yeah, I'm going to bring you back to what my guidance counselor told me: follow your heart, and that's the bottom line, And listening to what you truly want, um, and blocking out all the distractions of people telling you that you couldn't do it, you can't do it, you shouldn't do it. It's not a good idea. And this is another tangent answer to your question, Dr. Ben. But listen, there is never going to be any shortage of people in your life that tell you that you can't do something, ever. So, can you still make decisions for yourself? And can you really, truly follow your heart in the face of all these people and things and distractions and scenarios that are telling you that you shouldn't? In terms of location, let's say someone's out there just really, hey, all I want from this call is how do I know where to start practicing? Like, what's the location? Again, follow your heart. The grass is never greener. Let me put it that way. Okay. We have docs that we have been training for years that practice in the poorest counties in Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee's bad enough. Sorry, no offense, but the poorest county of Tennessee is pretty bad. These docs have patients that are coming to them paying cash over and over again over the course of years, coming to them for the upkeep of of optimizing their spine and nervous systems, for wellness, for years, that live in a bus in the middle of the woods in the poorest county in Tennessee. Okay. I have docs that are practicing in the most incredibly wealthiest zip codes in the world. And I don't know if you guys know, but the wealthiest zip code in the world is Alpine, New Jersey. Okay. It's crazy. But we have docs there that are doing just fine. It's a different way of life, right? So don't do the whole demographic thing. How much are people earning in the median? Okay. I'm just telling you, if you know what you're doing and you're trained right and you're listening to podcasts like this that are preparing you for the eventualities of real world practice, the grass is always greener and you'll never find the perfect location. So since you know that, you pick the location that you want to be in that adds to your human experience, because that can't be ignored, right? You don't want to get chiseled. You don't want to just work and no life. Remember, I'm going to tell all my clients out there, I was like, you're working to live. You're not living to work. There's a lot more to life than just work. And, let's put chiropractic in perspective. There's a lot more to life than just chiropractic, This just, life is way more than just one entity. So again, follow your heart. Don't overthink it. And if I can't say this online, I will. But anyone that tells you that you can't do it, tell them to F themselves, because there's nothing better to see the satisfaction of succeeding in the face of people telling you that you suck, you can't do it. Because I know I have plenty of people right now that I am giving the proverbial middle finger to in my whole life because they told me I couldn't do it. And so, all I can say is look at me now, and I'd love for all of you to experience that. It's just so, so satisfying.
Can you talk about who We is, your team, your company, the offerings that you've created for chiropractors, the resources you've built, just where students can connect and learn more from the types of materials that you've brought forth and identified that you wanted to bring to the profession?
Sure. First and foremost, I'm a chiropractor in practice right now. I'm in my office right now in about 20 minutes at 3 o'clock Central. They're rolling in. So I'm in practice in Frankfort, Illinois. Um, but my practice is my side gig. My main gig has become founding and I'm the CEO of Close for Chiro, and that is a professional business consulting company specifically for chiropractors on teaching you all how to onboard every new patient for the highest amount of results and maximum compliance. Right. My team, I have two great partners. One is Sean Rundle in Southern California in Laguna Hills. I have Jen Rosenhart. She's based out of Gilbert, Arizona. And not only are these two my right and left hand man and woman, but they were one of my first clients over 10 years ago. And they've taken this stuff to next levels, next generation, and they are joining me in this journey. And in terms of my offerings, yeah, I gotta be honest, we don't really work with students, which is why I like these opportunities because this is a way for me to give back to the student population. And the reason we don't work with students is because it would be like for the musician example of you coming to learn how to play in a concert hall when you really are still working on the scales, you know. And I want you guys to spend as much time and energy on learning the scales, clinical skills, palpation skills, basic business skills. And there's you could stay so busy on those things. And then when we want to fast track and put your sales skills and your marketing on steroids, like we're right there for you. And we just have make it happen quicker for you than having to figure it out on your own. However, with that said and done, we have worked with a handful of students in the past 10 years. But these are absolute rock stars. They have a leg up. So I mean, just to be completely honest, like those people there's always one, right? Those are unicorns and we work with them. But for the majority, like we're there for you. Once you hit 5, 6, 10 years in practice is when you start looking out for how do I do this better? And that's typically where we come in.
Okay. And then before I let you get off of here, if you could maybe just give like a little bit of a blueprint for how chiropractic students can really make the most of their time in school and sort of balance that blend of curricular and extracurricular and maybe like some topics that most students are not aware of or not thinking of that actually become really relevant when you are in practice, and maybe even some of the struggles that you're observing in the clients that you work with, and how those struggles could maybe be avoided potentially if students are able to make the most of their time in school.
Mm, that's a great question. Yeah, you got to keep it real. Chiropractic isn't a bubble in school. You got to pop that bubble and you got to get outside. And the way that I would love all of you to get outside is obviously get involved with your school, your clubs, the academics, the clinics, stuff like that. But you should always have something that's has nothing to do with school outside. It could be a job, okay, which is a great way. You could be joining a chess club. I don't know. I was a college fencer, so I know fencing's weird. Like it wasn't really good for my social life then. Still not now, but nevertheless, I digress. But I joined the fencing club in downtown Atlanta, which just opened my world up to a whole different set of people. I got used to talking about chiropractic and what it was to people who had no idea or didn't care too much about it. That's really what needs to happen for most of your extracurriculars, like nothing to do with chiropractic, but everything to do with everything else is the best thing. And here's the thing: you're gonna start. Um, I'm a great storyteller, and not because I'm a great storyteller because I have so many stories. Like I have so many of these life experiences that I remember when this happened, and it just fits the conversation so well right now with Sally, my patient that is going through something, and I just tell a story, and they're like captivated, like oh my god, what happened next? And I think the modern practitioner, especially in 2023 and beyond, especially with social media, I understand like everything's revolved around stories, and if you can develop your own stories, right now, they're priceless later on. You tell these stories and you teach and you mentor and you lead people through your experiences and your stories and your troubles and tribulations. And look at me right now, like I'm sharing stories with you. Like this is how it worked, and it hopefully it serves valuable for the people that are listening.
Of course it does. Yes, thank you so much for all the time you shared with us today. Can you maybe just touch really briefly on like X-ray and diagnostics and how chiropractors are able to utilize X-ray to better understand what it is that they're looking for and how they work with people in their practices?
Oh, it's funny you asked that. Maybe Ben, you did some research, but X-ray, yeah, I have issue with X-ray because most chiropractors take X-ray as just a flippant, oh, this is what I got to do. Frankly, if you're not extracting as much information from any diagnostic, especially invasive ones, like you have no business doing it. For what we teach in our docs is a version of what's called a Penning's analysis, Penning analysis. This analysis goes back to the 1930s, docs, like biomechanics, especially of the cervical spine. And what this analysis says is that we're going to do a biomechanical assessment on the segmental motion of a cervical vertebra as it pertains to the vertebra below it. And so you're measuring individual segmental motion. Now, without getting too much into detail, from a chiropractic standpoint, and I'm a Gonstead practitioner, by training, it's really nice to know, like, we've actually narrowed down exactly the segment that is the most fixated, which is one of the elements of vertebral subluxation complex or kinesiopathology. I don't care where you are on the spectrum. Some people can't say the S word, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Like, that is a problem. So what better way to actually see it? Now, here's the next thing. Not only do you see it as the chiropractor, but we want to use X-ray so your patients see it. Instead of looking at X-ray, it's like, oh, it's just an X-ray. No, this is me. And this is the problem. Like, C6 is not moving. It's completely stuck in flexion and extension. I get it. That's how I feel, doctor. I just feel like someone needs to just move something and I can't explain it. Oh, you mean it's actually related to the pain down my arm? Yeah, totally makes sense. Why didn't anyone show me this before? My knucklehead MD just gave me muscle relaxers. Like, these are the things you hear all day. By understanding on how to use a tool like X-ray from the perspective of not only clinically, which I love teaching docs how to do, but also how to present that to your patients so it becomes real, emotional, raw, them, not something that's arbitrary and not relating to them. So that's what I have to say about X-ray.
No, that's great. And I really just appreciate you being transparent and vulnerable and just like, yeah, just like you said, firing off the hip and providing a lot of value for students, for prospective students, just to wrap their head around the idea of becoming a chiropractor. It's really kind of a vague concept. So I appreciate you bringing a lot of life to it. And I'll just let you close with any final messages to the prospective students, to the chiropractic students, that are embarking on this journey to become a chiropractor.
Thanks, Dr. Ben. I think I've said everything I needed to say, but I think in closing is I understand that many of you are probably confused, unsure, thinking about, like, is this the right route for me? How am I going to make this work? And I got to tell you something. The only way that it will not work is if you continue to live on an island all by yourself. If you continue to feel like I can figure this out all by myself and I'll be okay. No, you won't be okay. One of the glorious things about what we do, especially at Close for Chiro, is the fact that we've helped cultivate a community where even docs who have been doing this for 20 years are still reaching out for help. And if you do that, listen, not everybody in the world is going to be seeing you as competition, because that's another issue. I could talk up 2 weeks about competition. We don't have competition, but we got to stick together here. And the reason why chiropractic is not where it needs to be right now, I believe, is one of the main reasons, is that we've been so divided by this mentality, like, I can do this by myself. And it's not going to work. Let me just tell you something. Nobody does anything by themselves, at least successfully. If you look at all the failures in the world, they were lone wolves. Like, Nikola Tesla is a prime example of a brilliant person that failed because he did not collaborate. Like, wrap your head around that for a second. Which is funny that Elon takes the name Tesla, and Elon being the most incredible collaborator in the history of business, politics, what have you, communications, and just, those are clues that successful people are leaving for you. So don't do it by yourself. Reach out. And if someone doesn't want to help you, yeah, whatever, move on. There's plenty of people that are out there who know more than you, who have been exactly where you are, and you reach out and help, and me included. If you want to reach out to me, you're finding me on this particular podcast, congratulations. You can email me direct at dan@closeforchiro.com. You have to let me know that you heard this podcast, or else it just goes into junk and I don't answer it. But if you tell me there was a connection between me and you from a podcast like this, I will more than happily talk to you, email you, whatever, if you have a question and you're reaching out for help. We'll always be there for you.